A 5-year-old girl I'd never seen before grabbed my hand in the mall and called me mommy. When she whispered what she said next, the security guard who came running stopped dead in his tracks. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about fate. My name is Lyrics, and 3 months ago I thought I had my life figured out. I was a marketing coordinator at a downtown firm, had my own apartment, and was finally feeling like a real adult at 28. But that Saturday morning, when my boss called me into his office, everything I thought I knew about my future crumbled in 10 minutes. I'd been let go due to budget cuts, effective immediately. The humiliation of packing my desk while my coworkers pretended not to stare was unbearable. I couldn't face going home to tell my roommate Valen that I'd lost my job, so I drove to Westfield Mall instead, hoping the crowd would make me feel less alone. I'd been having these strange dreams for weeks leading up to that day. Dreams about a little girl with curly blonde hair who would reach out to me, calling for her mommy. They were so vivid I'd wake up with tears on my face, feeling like I'd lost something precious. I told myself it was just stress from work, but deep down I knew these dreams meant something more. What I didn't know was that losing my job that morning would lead me straight to the most important moment of my life. As I wandered through the mall that afternoon, feeling sorry for myself and questioning every decision I'd ever made, I had no idea that a 5-year-old girl named Winter was about to grab my hand and change everything. What she whispered to me wasn't just coincidence. It was proof that some connections run deeper than blood, deeper than logic, and sometimes the universe has to break your heart before it can show you where you truly belong. The Westfield Mall on a Saturday afternoon is usually my nightmare. Crowds of families, screaming toddlers, teenagers taking selfies by the fountain, and that overwhelming mix of food court grease and department store perfume that hits you the moment you walk through those glass doors. But that day, I needed the chaos. I needed to be somewhere where my problems felt small compared to the noise around me. I parked my beat-up Honda Civic in the far corner of the lot, taking a moment to stare at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were still red from crying in my boss's office earlier. Jennifer Matthews, the woman who'd seemed so impressed with my campaign presentations just last month, had looked at me like I was a stranger when she delivered the news. Budget cuts, Lyrics. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. 26 months of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and sacrificed weekends, and it was nothing personal. Walking through the mall entrance, I felt invisible in the worst possible way. Couples walked past me holding hands, talking about their weekend plans. Mothers pushed strollers while chatting on their phones about soccer practice and dinner preparations. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere, to someone. I'd always prided myself on being independent, on not needing anyone else to define my worth. But standing there watching families move past me like water around a stone, I felt completely untethered. The dreams had started about 6 weeks earlier, right around the time rumors of layoffs began circulating at work. At first, they were just flashes, a small hand reaching for mine, a voice calling "Mommy" with such longing it made my chest ache. Then they became more detailed. I would see a little girl with the most beautiful curly blonde hair and bright blue eyes, standing in what looked like a playground or maybe a backyard. She would look directly at me and smile, but there was always sadness behind her eyes, like she was trying to tell me something important, but couldn't find the words. The dreams were so real that I started waking up with my arms stretched out, as if I'd been reaching for someone. Valen, my roommate, had started giving me concerned looks when she'd find me sitting at the kitchen table at 3 a.m. staring at nothing. "Maybe you should talk to someone," she'd suggested gently. "The stress at work is really getting to you." But I couldn't explain that these weren't stress dreams. They felt like memories of something that hadn't happened yet, if that made any sense at all. Walking past the Disney store, I watched a father lift his daughter onto his shoulders so she could see the Frozen display better. She squealed with delight, wrapping her tiny arms around his forehead. The sight should have made me smile, but instead it triggered that same aching sensation I felt in my dreams. I'd never particularly wanted children. My career had always come first, and at 28 I figured I had plenty of time to think about families later. But something about watching that father and daughter made me feel like I was missing a piece of myself I didn't even know existed. The food court was packed, every table occupied by groups of friends or families sharing meals and conversation. I bought a pretzel I didn't want from Auntie Anne's, more for something to do with my hands than because I was hungry. The salt was too sharp on my tongue, and I found myself thinking about my adoptive parents, Richard and Helen, who'd raised me with more love than any child could ask for. They'd always been open about my adoption, never made it seem like a secret or something to be ashamed of. But they'd never had information about my biological family, and I'd never felt the need to search, until recently. Sitting on a bench near the center fountain, I watched the coins glinting at the bottom and wondered how many wishes had been made there, how many people had tossed in their spare change hoping for love, for luck, for second chances. The noise around me started to fade into background hum as I found myself thinking about those dreams again. The little girl's face was so clear in my memory now, clearer than the faces of people I saw every day at work. Her eyes held a kind of ancient sadness that seemed impossible for someone so young. I pulled out my phone to check the time. 2:30. I'd been wandering around for almost an hour, and I still couldn't bring myself to go home and face the reality of unemployment. That's when I decided to walk toward the children's play area near Macy's. I told myself I was just people watching, but deep down I think I was looking for something. Or maybe something was looking for me. I was standing near the children's play area, watching toddlers climb through a maze of colorful tunnels, when I felt a small hand slip into mine. The touch was so gentle, so natural, that for a split second I thought maybe a child had just gotten confused in the crowd. But when I looked down, my heart stopped completely. The little girl from my dreams was standing right there, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine with surprising strength. She had the same curly blonde hair that caught the mall's fluorescent lights like spun gold, the same impossibly blue eyes that had been haunting my sleep for weeks. But seeing her in person, in broad daylight, surrounded by the mundane chaos of weekend shoppers, felt like stepping into an alternate reality. "Mommy," she said, and her voice was exactly as I remembered it from my dreams, soft and sweet with just a hint of relief. "I knew I'd find you." My mouth went dry. This couldn't be happening. Children didn't just materialize from dreams into shopping malls. I knelt down to her level, my knees hitting the cold tile floor as I tried to process what was happening. Up close, she was even more beautiful than in my dreams, but there was something else too. A familiarity that went deeper than the dreams, like looking into a mirror that reflected not my face, but something essential about who I was. "Sweetheart," I managed to say, my voice coming out shakier than I intended, "I think you've got the wrong person. I'm not your mommy." She tilted her head to one side, studying my face with the kind of intensity only children possess. Her grip on my hand tightened, and I could feel her pulse through her small fingers, rapid like a bird's heartbeat. "But you look just like her," she said matter-of-factly, "and you feel like her too." The rational part of my brain was screaming that this was impossible, that I needed to find this child's real parents and get them reunited immediately. But there was another part of me, a part I'd never acknowledged before, that felt complete for the first time in my life. Holding this little girl's hand felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. "What's your name, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm and reassuring. "Winter," she said, and then she leaned closer, close enough that I could smell the strawberry shampoo in her hair. Her next words came out in a whisper that made my blood run cold. "But you were in my dreams last night." The world tilted sideways. This 5-year-old child was telling me she'd been dreaming about me, just like I'd been dreaming about her. The coincidence was too massive, too impossible to be random. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something huge and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "Winter," I repeated, and her name felt familiar on my tongue. "Where are your parents? Are you lost?" She shook her head with complete certainty. "I'm not lost. I found you. Mommy told me you'd be here." Before I could ask what she meant, I heard heavy footsteps approaching quickly from behind. "Excuse me, ma'am, is there a problem here?" The voice was deep and authoritative, clearly security. I turned to see a tall man in a navy blue uniform walking toward us with purpose. His badge read Thane Caldwell Security, and he had the kind of serious expression that suggested he'd dealt with plenty of situations involving lost children and concerned strangers. But as he got closer, as his eyes focused on Winter's face, something extraordinary happened. He stopped walking, not slowed down, not paused, but stopped dead in his tracks like he'd hit an invisible wall. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint right there on the mall floor. "That's impossible," he whispered, and I could hear the shock in his voice. His eyes darted between Winter and me, and his hand went to his radio like he was going to call for backup, but then he just let it drop to his side. "Do you know her?" I asked, still holding Winter's hand as she pressed closer to my side. Thane's mouth opened and closed like he was trying to speak but couldn't find the words. Finally, he managed to say, "Winter, what are you doing here?" "How did you get here?" The way he said her name, with such familiarity and such fear, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity or a lost child wandering the mall. This was something else entirely, something that had shaken a seasoned security guard to his core. Winter looked up at him with those impossibly blue eyes and said, "I told you, Uncle Thane. I found my other mommy." Uncle Thane. The pieces were starting to come together, but the picture they were forming was more impossible than anything I could have imagined. Thane's legs seemed to give out slightly, and he grabbed onto a nearby bench for support. His radio crackled with some routine security chatter, but he ignored it completely. His eyes fixed on Winter like she was a ghost he couldn't quite believe was real. "Uncle Thane, this is my other mommy," Winter said with the kind of matter-of-fact confidence only children possess. "The one from my dreams. I told you she was real." The word uncle hit me like a physical blow. This security guard wasn't just some stranger who happened to know Winter. He was family. And from the way he was staring at both of us, like we were pieces of a puzzle he couldn't figure out how to put together, there was clearly much more to this story. "Winter," Thane said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you're supposed to be with Grandma Naya. How did you get here? She's going to be worried sick." "I told Grandma I needed to use the bathroom at Target," Winter said, swinging our joined hands like this was the most normal conversation in the world. "But then I saw her walking by the window, and I knew I had to find her before she left again." She'd seen me through the Target window, which meant she'd recognized me, had somehow known I was the person from her dreams just by catching a glimpse of me walking through the mall. The impossibility of it all was making my head spin, but Winter's small hand in mine kept me grounded in the moment. Thane pulled out his phone with shaking fingers and hit a contact labeled Naya Emergency. The phone barely rang once before a frantic woman's voice came through so loudly I could hear it from where I stood. "Thane, thank God. I can't find Winter anywhere. She said she was going to the bathroom and then she just vanished. I've been searching Target for 20 minutes and security is helping, but nobody has seen her and I don't know what to do." "Naya, listen to me," Thane said, his voice steadier now but still strained. "I have Winter. She's safe. She's here at the mall with me." "Oh, thank God," came the relieved response. "How did she get to you? Where exactly are you?" Thane looked at me, then at Winter, then back at his phone like he was trying to figure out how to explain something that defied explanation. "Naya, I need you to sit down. Are you sitting down?" "Just tell me where to find her, Thane." "We're by the children's play area near Macy's. But Naya, there's something else, something impossible. Winter found someone, a woman who looks exactly like Celeste." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When Naya finally spoke, her voice was different, smaller somehow. "What do you mean, exactly like Celeste?" I felt Winter squeeze my hand tighter, and when I looked down at her, she was smiling up at me with such pure joy that my heart ached. Whatever was happening here, whatever impossible circumstances had brought us together, this little girl was happy. For the first time since Thane had appeared, she looked genuinely, completely happy. "I mean identical," Thane said, his eyes never leaving my face. "If I didn't know better, I'd think Celeste was standing right here in front of me." Celeste. The name hit me like recognition without understanding, like hearing a song you know you've heard before but can't remember where. Winter's mother, I realized. The woman she'd been calling Mommy in her dreams, the one who had somehow led her to me. "We'll be right there," Naya said, and I could hear her moving around, probably grabbing keys and a purse. "Don't let either of them leave. Do you understand me, Thane? Don't let them leave." Thane ended the call and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear, hope, disbelief, and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. "I don't understand what's happening here," I said, my voice coming out stronger than I felt. "But I'm not going anywhere until I do. This little girl has been in my dreams for weeks, and now she's here, and she knows things about me that she shouldn't know. I need answers." "You've been dreaming about Winter?" Thane asked, and I could see him making connections I couldn't yet follow. Every night for over a month. Dreams so real, I'd wake up crying. She'd reach for me and call me Mommy, and I could never understand why because I've never wanted children. But seeing her now, being here with her, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. Winter tugged on my hand and looked up at me with those impossibly blue eyes. "That's because you're supposed to take care of me now," she said simply. "Mommy told me in my dreams. She said my other mommy needed me as much as I needed her." Thane sat down hard on the bench, running his hands through his hair. "This is impossible," he muttered. "But then again, Winter's been telling us about her dreams for months, and we all thought it was just her way of processing grief." "Grief?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer would change everything. "Celeste died in a car accident exactly 1 year ago today," Thane said quietly. "Winter's been living with her grandmother ever since, going to therapy, trying to heal. But she's always insisted that her mommy visits her dreams and that someday she'd find her other mommy. We thought it was just wishful thinking." The mall noise faded to nothing around us. 1 year ago today. The same day I'd started having strange dreams about feeling incomplete, about missing something I couldn't name. The same day my life had started feeling like it was leading somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't identify. "I think," I said slowly, "we need to wait for your grandmother to get here, because I have the feeling this story is bigger than any of us realized." 15 minutes felt like 15 hours as we waited for Naya to arrive. Winter had settled onto my lap on the bench like she belonged there, chattering about her dreams with the casual ease of someone discussing the weather. She told me about how her mommy would visit her at night and tell her stories about a sad lady who looked just like her, but lived far away. How her mommy promised that someday the sad lady would find Winter and they would take care of each other. Thane kept pacing back and forth, checking his watch and muttering under his breath. Every few minutes he would stop and stare at me like he was seeing a ghost, then shake his head and resume pacing. "This doesn't make sense," he kept saying. "None of this makes sense." But it was starting to make sense to me in a way that defied logic but felt absolutely true. The dreams, the timing, the instant connection I felt with Winter, even losing my job this morning and ending up at this exact mall at this exact time. It all felt like pieces of a plan I hadn't been aware I was part of. When Naya finally appeared, hurrying through the crowd with her silver hair flying behind her and her face flushed from running, I knew immediately that my life was about to change forever. She stopped about 10 feet away from our bench, her eyes scanning the area until they landed on Winter, and then her face crumpled with relief. "Winter, baby, you scared me so much," she started to say, but then her gaze shifted to me and the words died in her throat. The color drained from her face just like it had from Thane's, but this was different. This was recognition, not just shock. She brought her hand to her mouth and made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my dear God." Winter hopped off my lap and ran to her grandmother, wrapping her small arms around Naya's legs. "Grandma, I found her. I found my other mommy, just like real mommy said I would." Naya's eyes never left my face as she reached into her purse with trembling hands. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward me. "Is this possible?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Please tell me this is possible." The photo on her phone screen was of a woman who could have been my identical twin. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same nose, same smile. But it wasn't me. I'd never seen this woman before in my life, yet looking at her felt like looking into a mirror. "That's Celeste. Naya said, tears streaming down her face now. "That's Winter's mother. That's my daughter." My hand started shaking as I stared at the phone. The resemblance wasn't just strong, it was impossible. We looked like the same person photographed at different times. "I don't understand," I managed to say. Naya scrolled to another photo, this one showing Celeste as a baby in a hospital bassinet. "Celeste was adopted," she said, her voice barely audible over the mall noise around us. "We adopted her when she was 3 days old. The agency told us there was a twin, another baby girl, but she'd been placed with a different family. We tried to get information about her over the years, but the records were sealed. Celeste always wondered about her sister, always felt like there was someone missing from her life." The world tilted sideways. Twin, sister. The words echoed in my head as everything suddenly made horrifying, beautiful sense. The dreams, the connection, the feeling of incompleteness that had haunted me my entire life. "What was the adoption agency?" I asked, though I was already certain I knew the answer. "Bright Beginnings in Sacramento," Naya said, "in 1996. My knees went weak. "That's where I was adopted from. Same agency, same year. Richard and Helen Morrison adopted me on March 15th, 1996. March 12th for Celeste," Naya whispered. 3 days apart. We'd been born, separated, and placed with families within a 3-day window. Twins who'd never known each other existed until this impossible moment in a shopping mall. Winter looked up at both of us with satisfaction, like she'd just completed a puzzle she'd been working on for months. "See? I told you she was real. Mommy said she'd help me find her, and she did." "The dreams," I said, understanding flooding through me. "Winter's been having dreams about me because Celeste somehow knew. Somehow she knew about me and was trying to bring us together." Naya nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Winter started having the dreams right after Celeste died. She'd wake up talking about her other mommy, who looked just like her real mommy but was sad and far away. We thought it was just her way of processing the loss." "But it wasn't," I said, looking down at Winter, who was beaming up at me. "It was Celeste. She found a way to connect us." Thane, who'd been silent through this entire revelation, finally spoke up. "The anniversary," he said quietly. "Today is the 1-year anniversary of Celeste's death, and that's when Winter found you." I knelt down and pulled Winter into my arms, and she came willingly, naturally, like we'd been doing this her whole life. "Your mommy kept her promise, didn't she?" I whispered into her hair. "She always keeps her promises," Winter said simply. "And now you can help take care of me, and I can help take care of you, just like she said." Looking up at Naya through my tears, I saw my future reflected in her eyes. A future I'd never planned for, but had been meant for all along. The next few hours changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Naya invited me to her house, a cozy 2-story home about 20 minutes from the mall where Celeste had grown up. Walking through the front door felt like stepping into a life that should have been mine. Family photos lined the hallways, and in every single one I saw my own face staring back at me through Celeste's eyes. Naya showed me Celeste's bedroom, which she'd kept exactly as it was. The adoption papers were in a box under the bed, yellowed with age, but clearly stating that Celeste Morrison had a twin sister placed with another family. My maiden name had been Morrison too, before my adoptive parents changed it to their surname. We'd been born Celeste and Lyrix Morrison, separated for 28 years, and now brought back together by a 5-year-old girl who refused to let death keep her family apart. Winter curled up between Naya and me on the living room couch as we went through photo albums. She pointed to pictures of Celeste and said, "That's my first mommy," then pointed to me and said, "And this is my second mommy." The casual way she said it, like having 2 mothers was the most natural thing in the world, made my heart ache with love for this extraordinary little girl. That first week was a blur of DNA tests that confirmed what we already knew. Phone calls to my adoptive parents who cried with joy at learning I'd found my biological family, and long conversations with Winter's therapist who was amazed at the sudden improvement in her behavior. The night terrors stopped completely. She slept through the night for the first time since Celeste died. 2 months later, I moved into Naya's house. She'd converted Celeste's old room into a space for me. But I spent most nights in Winter's room anyway, reading her bedtime stories and listening to her talk about her dreams, which were now filled with happy memories instead of searching and sadness. Naya offered me a job helping her run the small bakery she'd owned for 30 years. It wasn't marketing, it wasn't corporate, it wasn't anything I'd ever imagined doing with my life. But walking into Sweet Dreams Bakery every morning, working alongside my biological mother-in-law, learning family recipes that Celeste had grown up making, felt more like home than any office job ever had. Winter started kindergarten that fall, and every morning she would hug both Naya and me goodbye, then whisper to the air, "Bye, first mommy. See you in my dreams." She never seemed sad about it anymore. Having me there seemed to complete some circle that had been broken when Celeste died. The most beautiful moment came 3 months after we'd found each other. Winter and I were visiting Celeste's grave together, something we did every Sunday. Winter always brought flowers and would sit cross-legged on the grass, telling Celeste about her week at school and what we'd baked together. That particular Sunday, she looked up at the headstone and said, "First Mommy, I want you to meet Second Mommy officially." She grabbed my hand and placed it on the cool marble. "Second Mommy, this is First Mommy. She says thank you for taking such good care of me." I felt something shift in that moment, something settle into place that had been floating loose my entire life. "Thank you," I whispered to Celeste. "Thank you for leading me to her. Thank you for trusting me with the most precious thing in your world." Winter squeezed my hand. "She says you're welcome. And she says she always knew you'd be the best second mommy ever, because you have the same heart she does." 6 months after that day in the mall, I legally adopted Winter. Naya cried through the entire court proceeding, and Winter wore a white dress she'd picked out specially for the occasion. When the judge asked her if she understood what adoption meant, she said, "It means my second mommy becomes my forever mommy, but I still get to keep my first mommy in my dreams." The job I lost that morning was the best thing that ever happened to me. If I hadn't been wandering through that mall, feeling sorry for myself and questioning everything about my life, I never would have been there when Winter needed to find me. Sometimes what feels like the end of everything is actually the beginning of the life you were meant to live. I learned that love doesn't end with death. It just finds new ways to connect the people who need each other most. I learned that children understand the mysteries of the universe better than adults because they haven't been taught that impossible things can't happen. Most importantly, I learned that family isn't just about blood or adoption papers or legal documents. Sometimes family is about a 5-year-old girl brave enough to grab a stranger's hand in a mall and say, "I found you." Winter is 7 now, and she still talks to Celeste in her dreams. But now they're happy conversations about her day at school, about the cookies we baked together, about how proud first mommy would be to see her learning to ride a bike. The sadness is gone, replaced by the certainty that love continues even when people can't. If you believe in the power of connection, in dreams that bring families together, and in love that transcends everything we think we understand about life and death, please share this story. Leave a comment and tell me about the impossible connections in your own life. And if you want to hear more stories about the magic that happens when we pay attention to the signs the universe sends us, subscribe to this channel. Sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that seem too impossible to be true.